Hi everyone, in this video we're going to cover how to export geometry from Rhino and prepare it in Maya for rendering with the Arnold Rendering Engine. Here's some geometry that I cooked up in Rhino using the shrink wrap tool. There was a little grasshopper involved, scattering some objects and then shrink wrapping them and using the result to both carve out and add some things on top of the original geometry. I may cover this in a future video, but this is what we're going to take into Maya. If we look at what we have here in the scene, we have a base mesh. We have this mesh which is overlapping with the base mesh, and then a backdrop. And this backdrop I just made by extruding a curve and doing a quad remesh on it to turn it into a mesh object. So we have this open mesh and then two closed meshes. So let's go ahead and export these to Maya. So we File, Export selected, and then I want to make sure that I choose the OBJ file format. I will turn it into, let's see, what is on the desktop, export for Maya, I'll call this, and then we'll get the OBJ options. We definitely want polygon mesh objects, and we want to make sure that we're mapping Rhino Z to OBJ-Y because Y is the vertical up axis in Maya. So these settings should be fine. So I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to hop over to Maya. And let's import these objects. So import, drag the screen over, go to desktop, and we want import or export for Maya is the name of my OBJ. Let's import that. Then my objects pop in. I'm going to hit the F key in Maya to frame the objects. And then if you're not familiar with Maya, to zoom in and out, I can simply use the middle mouse button. To rotate, I can hit the Alt key, so press the Alt key, and then I can rotate around the scene. And then the F key frames objects. Okay, so and framing objects will also make that the center of rotation for when you're rotating around. And then also to pan, you want to hold down on Alt and press the middle mouse button, and so that I can pan. And then I can also zoom in and out with the right mouse button. To select things, the hotkey is Q, and so I'm going to select this. And so first of all, you can see that our objects are dark, and we need to select and they're also all grouped together. So to fix this, we need to do a couple of things. First, let's fix the material issue. I'm going to select the object. I'm going to go to Mesh Display, and let's be sure to unlock the normals of our objects. Okay, and after we do that, we can now right-click, and we can assign an existing material, and by default, the shader that we want to assign is Lambert. This is the default shader or material in Maya, so I'm going to pick that. And then you can see, if I zoom in, that some of my objects are now more visible. However, the backdrop is not. So if I spin around, I can see that my backdrop is visible on this side, but this is telling me that I'm seeing the rear of the material or the object, and I need to reverse it. So let's go ahead and do the next step, which would be to ungroup our objects here. And so they're right now all in one mesh, but I can go to, I can separate them in a couple of ways. I can select this mesh over here in the outliner, which keeps a list of all of the objects in your scene. And I can go to, let's see, mesh, and I can hit separate. So this is one place where you can do it. Also on the right, you should have access to the modeling toolkit. If you don't, you can toggle it on and off here. So the modeling toolkit collects some of the tools that you'll find up in the menus and just keeps them in a convenient spot. So I'm going to hit separate here, but it's exactly the same. What we'll see now is that there's a little plus sign next to our original object, and now we've separated all of these meshes into unique meshes. However, we need to ungroup them now. So we can do that here under Edit, Ungroup, and then this transform node we can delete. All right, so we have this backdrop object now, which is something that we can select as an independent object. And now under Mesh Display, I want to reverse this object, and now I can see it. Here under Display, I can also decide to turn off the grid, so that's not overlapping. And then I want to maybe see the lines of the meshes, and I can turn those on here with wireframe unshaded. All right, so now I'm seeing all of my objects, and this is pretty good. When I select this object, if I wanted to move something, I could hit W, and that is so select the main hotkeys in Maya are Q for select, W for moving a selected object, E for rotating a selected object, and R for scaling an object. So Q, W, E, R, the first 4 letters on a keyboard. And so you'll see by default the pivot point is not in the center of the object. Also, you can see if we look in the attribute editor, so this is also a very important panel that you'll find to the right. The attribute editor will show all of the nodes and operations that are coming along with the object. So when I reverse the object, you'll see that we have this new node appearing here, which shows that I reversed it. So I can actually probably switch it again, but I'm bringing this up because Maya, unlike Rhino, keeps a record of many of the operations that you do to objects. So, and this can make your file larger and can also make the objects a little bit more prone to failing. And so what we often need to do when we have with the polymodeling tab open here, we can find these three icons here, which I like to call the Trinity of Maya, which is center pivot, delete by type, and delete by type history, and freeze transformations. So center pivot, delete history, freeze transformations. You do this all the time to objects. And while I have them all selected, let's just remember the pivot point of this object is down here at the origin. But I'm just going to go ahead and select all of these objects, center their pivots, delete their history, and freeze the transformations. And now, when I enable the pivot point for this object, you can see it's in the center. Same for this one, and same for the other objects. So that's really useful. You'll also see here on the backdrop that I have a much cleaner arrangement in my attribute editor, and that's because I've zeroed out, or I've gotten rid of any operations that I've done. So Maya does not remember any of those operations. I can, if I wanted to move this pivot point, let's say W, let's see, what is it? Yes, so let's say that I didn't like that the pivot point for this object is way up here. If I wanted to move it manually, I could hit the D key, which should allow me to select the pivot, and then the V key will enable a vertex snap. And now I could move this down to like somewhere here, hit the D key again, and now that pivot point is down there. So again, D to move the pivot, and then to toggle moving the pivot, and then D again to put it to make it fixed. Okay, so let's see. And also then the channel box, this is another important tab over here. Again, if any of these tabs are not open, you can, like that's the channel box, you can toggle it on and off here. But these tabs on the side are pretty important for quickly accessing certain things. And so freeze transformations, what does that do? Well, let's see if we scale this object. By default, all of these things are 0, and Maya is really geared for animation. You can see that we have the timeline down here. And let's say if we wanted to animate this object, we could keyframe its position, and then we could move it over. And so Maya is always keeping a memory of where objects start and then where they end so that you can animate them. But let's say we wanted to make this the new starting position for this object. If we hit freeze transformations here, you'll see that translate has gone to 0. So I'm just going to hit undo, and you can see that translate goes back to 22.5. So then if I hit this, take this to 0, it's going to go back to its original point. So that's why centering the pivot, deleting the history, and freezing it transformations are really important. It just zeroes out and gives you the cleanest possible objects. Okay, so let's see. We've covered unlocking normals, reversing them, making centering the pivots on the objects. We've covered the outliner here, which allows you to select different objects in your scene. And maybe while we've covered how to navigate, let's cover one more thing so we don't have to do it in the next video, or we'll cover it again. But let's say we wanted to put these things in layers. You can find layers by opening the channel box. And now if I come to the rightmost icon here, create a new layer and assign selected objects. So I'm selecting the backdrop. I can also rename these objects here, backdrop. And then I can't give it a layer with the same name. Sorry, the layer dialog is there. But I could call it, back _ drop. It just can't be exactly the same name. Or I could say L backdrop for layer. Just something to give it a unique identifier within Maya under the hood. So hit save, so I have L backdrop. And then if I don't want to see it, I can turn it off. V is the visibility. And then over here, I can hit T, which templates it, or R, which makes it reference. And reference is one that you'll use a lot. And you can still toggle on and off the visibility. R is nice because I can see it, but I can't actually select it. Okay, so before I make that a reference, put that on a reference layer, let's cover one more thing. In Rhino, meshes and subdivision surface objects or sub-D objects are different geometry types. In Maya, that is no longer true. Every mesh can be previewed as a sub-D just by hitting the 3 key on your keyboard. So if I select an object and then hit the 1 key, it shows it a mesh object as a faceted thing. And then if I hit the 3 key, it smooths it out. And when you're rendering, you can actually just on the fly toggle between these things, and you could render it as a faceted thing, or you could render it as a smooth thing. So I want my backdrop to be smooth, so I'm going to hit 3. And then also it's worth noting that if you hit 2 will allow you to see the faceted version as a cage. And that is because if I want to manipulate this object, it can, in smooth preview, it can be useful to see the faceted version, right? And so the way that I would then manipulate this is right-clicking the object. I could choose vertex, edge, or face. This is what you really do with the shift by holding down on shift control in Rhino. I actually like that better, but here you have to right click the object, and then you can, there are some hotkeys and I can't remember what they are, but now you can see you can select that vertex, and then I can move this up and down like that to tweak the object. So that can be useful for modeling, but we're not covering modeling in this object. So then I can right click and go back to object mode. And then I'm just going to hit 3, and now I'm seeing that as a smooth preview. These things are all quad objects, so I'm going to go ahead and hit 3 and smooth that one, and hit 3 and This has a large number of faces, but it should be fine. So I'm going to hit yes. And I'll see this as a smooth thing. Maybe I shouldn't have, because now, oh, now it's smooth. So yeah, this is a lot, but it still seems okay. And so now these objects are ready for rendering. Maybe I'll go ahead and put these things on a layer as well. So I'll call this, oops, this new layer will be meshes. And then let's see, what do we have here as far as our poly surfaces. So this will be, we'll call it growth, mesh growth. And let's see, poly surface, this might be some little object in the, which was inside. So I'm just going to delete that one, since I delete that one too. And then this is going to be our mesh mass. Okay, cool. So now I have all of these objects organized, and they're organized in layers. I'm going to make my backdrop reference for now, so I don't actually accidentally select it. And then I'm going to, in the next video, cover how you can render objects.